Who gave you permission to speak, girl? The king didn't shout. He didn't have to. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and every alpha at the table flinched. I knew the rules. Servants are invisible. Servants are silent. But if I didn't speak now, I would never forgive myself. So I gripped the silver tray until my knuckles turned white, looked the most dangerous man in the world in the eye, and signed my own death warrant. "No one, Your Majesty," I whispered, my voice shaking. "But if you sign that treaty, you're making a mistake." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. The king slowly set down his quill. He stood up, towering over me, his shadow swallowing my small frame whole. "A servant giving advice on politics?" He stepped closer, backing me against the cold stone wall, his scent of cedar and storm rain overwhelming my senses. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't have your tongue cut out for your insolence." I couldn't breathe, but I didn't look away. "Because I'm right." He stared at me for a heartbeat. 2, 3. Then, his hand moved to my throat, not to choke me, but to tilt my chin up. "You are either very brave," he murmured, his thumb brushing my pulse, "or very foolish. Let's find out which." Okay, I have chills. That is how you start a story. Welcome back to Storm's Werewolf Romance Library, the coziest corner of the internet for romance lovers. I am so happy to have you here with us again. If that opening hook grabbed you, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It helps more people find our stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. For those who want to support the channel even more, check out the Join button to become a member of our inner circle. I love hearing from you guys, so head down to the comments and tell me, where in the world are you listening from today? Are you on your lunch break, doing chores, or winding down for bed? And please, don't just listen, react. Tell me your favorite moments as we go. All right, get comfortable, because this story is just getting started. Chapter 1. The Cup of Shame. My knees screamed in protest against the unforgiving stone floor, but I forced myself to remain steady. The heavy silver tray in my hands trembled ever so slightly, a betrayal of the exhaustion that had settled deep into my bones over the last 6 months. Around me, the great hall of the Ashen Ridge pack was a cacophony of drunken laughter, clinking goblets, and the tearing of roasted meat. It was a sound that used to signal celebration and family, back when my father sat at the head of the table. Now it sounded like a cage. I kept my eyes fixed on the scuffed leather of my boots, refusing to look up at the banners that hung from the rafters, banners that no longer offered me protection, only a reminder of how far I had fallen. I was no longer Lyra, the Alpha's daughter. I was just the servant girl who was expected to pour the wine and disappear into the shadows before anyone noticed her presence. I navigated the crowded tables with the practiced caution of someone who knew the cost of a mistake. Every step was a calculation, every movement designed to be as unobtrusive as possible. I wasn't doing this for myself. If it were only my life on the line, I might have run into the wilds and taken my chances with the rogues. But I stayed for Aelin. My sister was fragile, her lungs weak from the fever that had taken our mother, and the healers demanded payment in gold that I did not have. Alpha Roran, the man who had usurped my father's seat and discarded me like refuse, paid the healers directly. In exchange, I belonged to him. My pride was a small price to pay for Aelin's breath, or so I told myself every night when I collapsed onto the straw mattress in the servants' attic. I reached the high table, the dais looming above me like a judgment. Roran sat in the centre, his face flushed with wine and triumph. He looked every bit the conqueror tonight, celebrating his engagement to Talia, the woman he had chosen to replace me. Talia sat beside him, draped in furs that had once belonged to my mother, preening under the adoration of the pack. I approached Roran's goblet, lifting the heavy pitcher to refill it. My hand was steady, my breathing controlled. I had done this 100 times. But Roran was in a cruel mood tonight. As I leaned forward, he shifted his leg beneath the table, his boot hooking sharply around my ankle. It happened too fast for me to catch myself. I stumbled, my knees colliding painfully with the stone step, and the pitcher slipped from my grasp. Red wine, dark as blood, splashed across the pristine white tablecloth and splattered onto Roran's boots. The entire hall went silent. The laughter died instantly, replaced by the terrifying sound of 200 wolves holding their breath. I scrambled to my knees, reaching for a cloth to dry the mess, but Roran's hand shot out and gripped my wrist, halting me. His grip was bruising, a reminder of the strength he loved to use against those weaker than him. "Look at this," Roran announced, his voice carrying to the back of the hall. He didn't look angry. He looked amused, which was far worse. "I try to be charitable. I try to give the poor girl a place in the pack despite her defect, and this is how she repays me: clumsiness and waste." He released my wrist with a shove that sent me sprawling back onto my heels. Talia laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. She leaned over, peering down at me with mock sympathy. "Oh, leave her be, Roran. It must be hard for her to see us so happy. Jealousy makes the hands shake, doesn't it, Lyra?" I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron, forcing the retort back down my throat. "I apologize, Alpha," I whispered, keeping my head bowed. "I will clean it immediately." Roran leaned down, his voice dropping to a low hiss that only I could hear. "You will clean it with your sleeves if you have to, and if you embarrass me again tonight, the healers won't be visiting your sister tomorrow. Do you understand me?" The threat was a cold blade in my gut. I nodded, my hands shaking as I began to sop up the wine with the hem of my apron, humiliated beyond measure, but trapped by my love for Ellin. Suddenly, the heavy iron-bound doors at the far end of the hall groaned open. The sound was not the usual slam of arrival. It was a slow, deliberate entrance that commanded attention. A hush fell over the room, heavier and more absolute than the silence caused by my spill. The herald stepped forward, his face pale, his voice trembling as he announced the arrival. "King Cyrus, of the Valerian territory, the Golden King approaches." Panic flared in Roran's eyes. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. "He's early," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "He wasn't supposed to be here until moonrise." Roran looked down at me, his eyes wide with frantic urgency. I was still on my knees, stained with wine, a living stain on his perfect evening. "Get out of sight," he snarled, pointing toward the servants' passage behind the dais. "You look like a beggar. If the king sees you, I will flay you myself. Go!" I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the tray and the pitcher, desperate to reach the shadows of the alcove before the guest of honor saw my shame. I turned to run, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I wasn't fast enough. As I reached the edge of the dais, the atmosphere in the room shifted violently. It wasn't just a change in mood, it was a physical pressure, a wave of power so immense it made the fine hairs on my arms stand up. The temperature seemed to rise, dispelling the chill of the stone hall, replaced by a radiating warmth that felt like standing before a furnace. I froze, caught between the urge to flee and an inexplicable pull that anchored my feet to the floor. I looked up, and there, standing in the centre of the hall, was a man who seemed to be woven from sunlight and terror. He didn't look at Roran. He didn't look at the crowd. His golden eyes locked instantly, terrifyingly, onto mine. Chapter 2. Thunder at the Door. The silence that descended upon the great hall was not empty. It was heavy, pressing against my eardrums like deep water. The man standing in the threshold was a titan, his shoulders broad enough to block out the moonlight streaming in from the courtyard. He wore no crown, yet the authority clinging to him was more tangible than the gold rings on Roran's fingers. His coat was dark, tailored to fit a frame that spoke of raw, leashed power, and his eyes, molten, burning gold, were fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath hitch in my throat. I wanted to look away, to obey Roran's frantic command to disappear into the shadows, but my body refused to listen. It was as if an invisible tether had snapped into place, anchoring me to the spot, right there on the edge of the dais, covered in wine and shame. Roran recovered his wits first, though his voice lacked its usual arrogant boom. He stepped around the table, putting himself physically between me and the intruder, trying to block the king's line of sight. "King Cyrus," Roran announced, spreading his arms in a gesture of welcome that looked more like a desperate attempt to regain control. "We were not expecting you until the moon was higher. The feast is... We are still preparing the main course in your honour." Roran's laugh was brittle, a nervous sound that grated against the silence. "Please, allow my servants to clear this mess so we can welcome you properly. We have the finest wine from the southern vineyards." The king did not even blink. He ignored Roran as completely as one ignores a buzzing fly. He took a step forward, and the sound of his boot on the stone floor echoed like a gavel striking a judge's bench. The crowd of Ashenridge wolves, usually so loud and rowdy, parted instantly. They scrambled over benches and pressed themselves against the walls, desperate to not be in his path. They could feel it too, the radiating heat, the scent that rolled off him in waves. It wasn't the musk of a normal alpha. It was the smell of ancient cedar, crushed spices, and the sharp electric tang of a storm about to break. It washed over me, drowning out the smell of stale wine and roasted meat, filling my lungs with something that felt terrifyingly like fresh air. "I did not come for your wine, Roran," King Cyrus said. His voice was a low rumble, a sound that vibrated in the floorboards beneath my feet. It was a voice that commanded attention without needing to shout. He continued to walk toward the dais, his stride long and purposeful. Roran faltered, taking a step back, his confidence crumbling in the face of true sovereignty. "Of course, Your Majesty," Roran stammered, sweating now. "But surely you wish to be seated. The high table is prepared. Talia, my intended, has saved a place for you." He gestured frantically to Talia, who was frozen in her chair, her face pale as she stared at the approaching monarch. I used the distraction to take a step back, clutching the tray to my chest like a shield. "Move, Lyra," I screamed internally. "Get to the alcove. Hide." If I stayed, Roran would punish me later. He would take his humiliation out on me, and by extension, on Aelin. I took another step, my boots sliding on the slick stone, trying to retreat into the darkness of the servants' corridor. But just as I reached the edge of the shadows, the king stopped. He was at the foot of the dais now, only a few feet away from where Roran stood. But he wasn't looking at the Alpha. He turned his head, his golden gaze slicing through the gloom to find me again. "Stop," Cyrus commanded. It wasn't a shout, but the word hit me with the force of a physical blow. My legs locked instantly. I stood paralyzed, half in the shadow, half in the torchlight, trembling. Roran looked between us, confusion warring with panic on his face. He looked at the king, then at me, the dirty, wine-stained servant girl trying to sneak away. A cruel sneer curled Roran's lip as he realized the king had noticed his embarrassment. "Forgive her, King Cyrus," Roran hissed, stepping toward me with a menacing glare. "She is a slow-witted creature, useless for anything but scrubbing floors. I told her to leave your presence." Roran reached out, grabbing my arm to shove me toward the door. "Get out, Lyra. Now." But before Roran could push me, a growl ripped through the air, a sound so deep and feral that it shook the dust from the rafters. Roran froze, his hand dropping from my arm as if he had been burned. King Cyrus moved faster than I could track. In a blur of motion, he ascended the steps of the dais, bypassing the Alpha entirely, and came to a halt directly in front of me. He was massive up close, a wall of heat and power that blocked out the rest of the room. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting a blow, expecting to be punished for daring to exist in his space. Instead, the air around me stilled, and a large, warm hand reached out, not to strike, but to gently grasp my trembling chin. Chapter 3. The King Kneels. The touch was electric. His skin was rough with calluses, but scorching hot, burning against the perpetual chill that seemed to live in my bones. I gasped, my eyes flying open to find King Cyrus staring down at me, his face mere inches from mine. Up close, his eyes were not just gold. They were a shifting landscape of amber and sunlight, swirling with an emotion I couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disgust. It looked terrifyingly like reverence. I stood frozen, the silver tray clattering from my numb fingers to the stone floor with a deafening crash. Neither of us flinched. The rest of the hall had ceased to exist. There was only the heat of his hand on my jaw and the storm raging in his gaze. She is just a servant, Your Majesty," Roran stammered from behind him, his voice high and thready with panic. "She spilled the wine. She ruined the tablecloth. She is clumsy and lacks discipline. I will have her punished for offending you, I swear it." Roran was desperate to rewrite the narrative, to paint me as the problem before the king could judge his hospitality. "Lyra, apologize to the king for your filth. On your knees, girl." Cyrus did not turn around. He did not release me. "One more word, Roran," the king said softly, his voice a lethal caress. "And I will tear your tongue from your head and feed it to the crows." The threat was delivered with such absolute certainty that Roran's mouth snapped shut with an audible click. The silence that followed was suffocating. I trembled under the king's inspection. I knew what he saw. A girl in grey rags, hair messy from a day of labour, hands red and chapped from scrubbing floors, and the front of her apron soaked in dark wine. I was a stain on his magnificence. I waited for him to recoil, to realise his mistake and wipe his hand on his coat. Instead, King Cyrus did the unthinkable. He stepped back, giving me room to breathe, and then, with a slow, deliberate grace that stunned the entire pack into paralysis, he lowered himself. One knee hit the dirty, wine-splattered stone floor. Then the other. The king of the Valerian territory, the ruler of the continent, the man who made alphas tremble, bowed his head before me. A collective gasp rippled through the room, sucking the air out of the hall. I stared down at the top of his dark hair, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might shatter my ribs. Kings did not kneel, especially not to servants, especially not to wolves like me who had been cast aside and forgotten. He reached out and took my hand, the one I had used to scrub the hearth only hours ago. He cradled it in his large palms as if it were made of spun glass. "Do not tremble, little one," he murmured, his voice rumbling against my skin. He looked up, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes stole the breath from my lungs. "I have walked this earth for 5 centuries, he said, his words carrying clearly to every stunned listener in the hall. "I have conquered kingdoms and burned cities. I have searched the corners of the world for my home." He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my scarred knuckles that sent a jolt of fire straight to my core. "And I never found it," he whispered, "until this moment." Tears pricked my eyes, hot and confusing. This was a dream. It had to be a cruel fever dream brought on by exhaustion. "My lord," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Please, you are mistaken. I am nothing. I am Lyra." I tried to pull my hand away, terrified that when he realized who I really was, the rejected, wolfless daughter of a dead alpha, his kindness would turn to rage. I couldn't bear to see that transition. I couldn't bear to have this moment of warmth snatched away. "You are not nothing," Cyrus growled, tightening his grip on my hand, refusing to let me retreat. "You are everything." He started to stand, pulling me with him, his intention clear to everyone watching. He was claiming me, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as something far more dangerous. "She is defected!" Roran shrieked, breaking the spell. The alpha stepped forward, his face purple with rage and disbelief. "You cannot claim her. She has no wolf, Cyrus. She is a dud, a genetic failure. She cannot shift. She cannot sense the pack bond. She is empty." Roran pointed a shaking finger at me, his desperation making him reckless. "She is broken goods. If you take her, you insult your own bloodline. She is not a mate for a king. She is barely a wolf at all." Chapter 4. The Golden Crown. The insult hung in the air, ugly and sharp. I flinched, instinctively curling my shoulders inward. Roran's words were the same ones he had used to justify stripping me of my rank 6 months ago. Empty. Broken. Failure. They were the words I had heard so often, I had begun to believe them. I looked at the floor, waiting for Cyrus to release my hand, waiting for him to realize he had been tricked by a pretty scent and a moment of madness. No king would want a queen who couldn't shift, who couldn't run with him under the moon. But Cyrus did not let go. Instead, a low, terrifying laughter rumbled in his chest. He stood to his full height, turning slowly to face Roran. The amusement on his face was terrifying because it was edged with violence. "Empty?" Cyrus repeated the word, tasting it. "You think she is empty because she did not answer to you?" The king stepped between me and Roran, shielding me with his body. "You arrogant child. Do you truly believe a creature of her magnitude would wake for a weakling like you?" Roran sputtered, confused. "Magnitude? She has no scent. She has no power." "She has no scent because she is concealing it," Cyrus corrected, his voice ringing with authority. "Her wolf went dormant to protect itself from your mediocrity. She is not broken, Roran. She is waiting." Cyrus turned back to me, his expression softening instantly. "Trust me, Lyra," he whispered. "Let me show them what you are." Before I could ask what he meant, he raised his hand and placed his palm flat against the center of my forehead. The moment his skin touched mine, the world exploded. It wasn't pain. It was a rush of pure, unadulterated energy that slammed into me like a tidal wave. It felt like a dam breaking inside my chest. The cold that had plagued me for months evaporated instantly, replaced by a searing heat that raced through my veins, setting every nerve ending on fire. I gasped, my back arching as power, ancient, heavy and golden, flooded my system. My vision went white, and then I felt her. My wolf. She wasn't sleeping anymore. She was roaring. She slammed against the surface of my skin, desperate to answer the call of the king standing before us. A collective scream of terror rose from the pack. I blinked the spots from my vision and looked down at my hands. They were glowing. A soft, pulsating golden light was radiating from my skin, casting long shadows across the room. But it wasn't just my hands. I could feel a burning sensation on my forehead where Cyrus had touched me, a brand of heat that felt permanent. I looked at Roran. He was pale, his eyes wide with horror, staring at my face. "A sunburst," Talia whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "The mark of the Primordial." "Impossible," Roran breathed, shaking his head. "They are extinct. They are myths." Cyrus removed his hand, stepping back to let them see me fully. I felt lightheaded, drunk on the sudden influx of power. The air around me hummed with energy. I wasn't just Lyra the servant anymore. I was something else. Something that made the alpha of the Ashen Ridge pack look very, very small. "She is a primordial," Cyrus declared, his voice filled with pride. "The mother of magic. The highest rank of wolf to walk this soil. And she is mine." Roran looked from the glowing mark on my forehead to the king's triumphant face. I saw the gears turning in his mind. He realized he had made a catastrophic mistake. He had treated royalty like a slave. But then his expression shifted from fear to a greedy, desperate cunning. He straightened his spine, puffing out his chest. "If she is a primordial," Roran said, his voice trembling but loud, "then she is the most valuable asset in this territory. She belongs to the Ashen Ridge pack. Her father was alpha here. By law, she is pack property until I release her." A smug, sickly smile spread across his face. "And I do not release her. She stays." Cyrus went still. The golden light in his eyes darkened, swirling with a storm that promised bloodshed. He tilted his head, looking at Roran with a predator's patience. "You wish to quote laws to me, Roran?" Cyrus asked softly. "Very well." He reached into his coat and pulled out a roll of parchment, the treaty Roran had been so eager to sign earlier that day. "Do you recall the terms of our protection agreement? Clause 4, specifically?" Roran frowned. The treasury clause. You may claim one item from the pack's treasury. Gold, jewels, weapons. Roran waved his hand dismissively. Take what you want from the vault, but the girl stays. Cyrus unfurled the document, holding it up so the signature was visible. The clause says I may claim any one item of value within your borders, Cyrus corrected, his smile turning razor-sharp. He turned his gaze back to me, and the look of possession in his eyes made my knees weak. I have no need for your gold, little Alpha. I claim her. Chapter 5. The Treaty of Ashen Ridge. You can't do that, Roran choked out, his face draining of all color. She is a wolf, not a goblet. You cannot claim a living person as treasury. I can claim anything I deem valuable, Cyrus replied, his voice calm, terrifyingly reasonable. He tapped the parchment with a single gloved finger. Your signature is right here, Roran. Or do you wish to debate the definition of value with me? Because from where I stand, this woman is the only thing of worth in your entire desolate kingdom. The insult landed like a physical blow, and a ripple of nervous laughter spread through the back of the hall where the lower-ranking wolves stood. Roran looked around wildly, seeing his authority crumbling in real time. He had signed the treaty blindly, desperate for the king's protection against the rogue armies to the north. He had thought he was clever. Now, he looked like a fool who had traded a diamond for a handful of dust.
This is slavery,
Roran shouted, trying to rally the pack's indignation. You are buying her like cattle. I flinched at the word cattle, the memory of the last 6 months stinging. But Cyrus didn't let the accusations stand. No, the king said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Slavery is forcing a primordial queen to scrub your floors to pay for her sister's medicine. Slavery is holding a family hostage with debt. I am not buying her, Roran. I am liberating her. He turned to me, his expression softening instantly. Lyra, the choice is yours. The treaty gives me the legal right to take you, but I will not force you. You can stay here, under his rule, or you can come with me. The hall held its breath. I looked at Roran, who was glaring at me with a mixture of hatred and a silent promise of punishment if I dared to leave. Then I looked at Aylin's empty chair at the back of the hall. If I left, who would pay for her healers? Who would protect her? As if reading my mind, Cyrus spoke again, his voice low enough that only I could hear. My healers are the best in the continent, Lyra. Your sister will have the royal physician attending to her before sunrise. She comes with us. I leave nothing behind. That broke me. The last chain holding me to this miserable place snapped. I looked at Roran, really looked at him, and realized how small he was. He wasn't a leader. He was just a bully in a stolen chair. I accept, I whispered, my voice trembling but clear. I choose the king. Roran snarled, lunging forward as if to grab me, but his beta, a burly man named Kale, caught his arm. Let her go, Alpha, Kale muttered, looking at Cyrus with terrified respect. If you break the treaty now, the king's army will be at our gates by dawn. Is she worth a war? Warren stopped, breathing heavily, his eyes darting between his beta and the king. He knew he was beaten. He shoved Kale away and straightened his jacket, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. Fine, he spat, looking at me with pure venom. Take the runt. Take her sister too. They are both burdens I am happy to be rid of. But know this, Lyra. When he tires of you, do not come crawling back to Ashen Ridge. You are exiled. You are no longer Pack. She was never yours to begin with, Cyrus said coldly. He turned his back on Roran, dismissing him completely. Guards. 2 towering warriors in black armor materialized from the shadows near the entrance. Collect Lady Lyra's sister from the infirmary. Ensure she is comfortable for travel. And find whatever belongings Lyra wishes to bring. I have nothing, I said softly, the shame warming my cheeks. Just the clothes on my back. Cyrus looked down at my stained apron and worn boots. His jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in his cheek. But he didn't pity me. He looked furious for me. Then we leave this place with nothing but the future, he declared. He offered me his arm, not as a master leading a servant, but as a gentleman escorting a lady. Shall we? I hesitated for a fraction of a second, my hand hovering over his forearm. The moment I touched him, that electric warmth flooded me again, grounding me. I took his arm. We began to walk toward the great doors, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. I could feel Roran's eyes boring into my back, a burning weight of malice. Just as we reached the threshold, Roran's voice rang out one last time, desperate to wound. She will never be a queen, Cyrus. You can dress a stray in silk, but she will always be a servant at heart. Cyrus stopped. He didn't turn around. He simply paused, tightening his arm over mine reassuringly. Then he spoke to the room at large. Pray to your gods that she is merciful, Roran, because if she is anything like me, you will regret letting her leave this room alive. Chapter 6. Leaving the Ashes. The night air hit my face like a slap, sharp and cold. But for the first time in years, it tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. The courtyard was bathed in moonlight, and parked in the centre was a carriage that looked more like a fortress on wheels. It was black lacquer and gold trim, pulled by 4 massive midnight-coloured horses that stamped the ground impatiently. The king's guards were already there, and my heart soared when I saw Aelin being carefully lifted into the carriage by a gentle-looking warrior. She looked pale and small in her blankets, but she was smiling, a real, confused, hopeful smile. Aelin! I broke away from Cyrus's side, rushing toward the carriage. The guard stepped back respectfully to let me pass. I scrambled up the steps and grabbed her hand. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, Lyra, she whispered, her voice raspy but full of wonder. They said we're going to a palace? Is it true? It's true, I promised, brushing hair from her feverish forehead. We're leaving. For good. Lady Lyra. A deep voice rumbled behind me. I turned to see Cyrus standing at the bottom of the steps. He wasn't looking at the carriage. He was looking at the castle we had just exited. His expression was unreadable, a mask of stone. Please join your sister. It is a long journey to the capital, and you both need rest. I nodded, climbing fully into the carriage. The interior was unlike anything I had ever seen. The seats were upholstered in velvet so plush I sank into it. A small magical lantern hung from the ceiling, casting a warm golden glow. There were fur blankets folded neatly in the corner, and a basket of fresh fruit and bread on a small table. It was a level of luxury I hadn't experienced since before my father died. Cyrus climbed in after me, the carriage rocking slightly under his weight.
He sat on the bench opposite us, filling the small space with his presence. The door clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the Ashen Ridge pack. The driver shouted, a whip cracked, and the carriage lurched forward.
I watched out the window as the grim stone walls of my prison faded into the darkness. I expected to feel sad. This was the only home I had ever known. But all I felt was a lightness in my chest, as if a heavy stone had been removed. For a long time there was silence. Aelin fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the motion of the carriage and the warmth of the furs. I sat stiffly, my hands folded in my lap, suddenly acutely aware of my appearance. I was sitting across from a king, covered in wine stains and dirt. I tried to pull my legs back, hiding my scuffed boots under the hem of my dress. "Stop that," Cyrus said softly. I jumped, looking up. He was watching me, his golden eyes luminous in the dim light. "Stop what, Your Majesty?" "Stop making yourself small," he said. "You spent 6 months shrinking so you wouldn't be noticed. You don't have to do that anymore. You take up as much space as you want, Lyra." He reached across the small table, offering me a goblet of water. "Drink. You're trembling." I took the goblet, my fingers brushing his. The spark was still there, undeniable. I drank greedily, realizing how thirsty I was. "Why?" I asked, lowering the cup. "Why did you do this? The treaty. You could have had gold. You could have had weapons. Why choose a servant and a sick child?" Cyrus leaned back, studying me. "I told you. I have been searching for 500 years. For a primordial?" I asked. "For my power?" "No," he said, and the intensity of his answer made me hold my breath. "Power I have in abundance. I have armies that can shake the earth. I don't need your magic, Lyra." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, bringing his face closer to mine. "I need you. My wolf has been alone for centuries. He has rejected every potential mate, every noblewoman, every queen. But the moment I walked into that hall, the moment I smelled you under the scent of stale wine and sorrow, he settled. For the first time in 500 years, the noise in my head stopped." I stared at him, overwhelmed. "But I'm just—" "If you say just a servant one more time," he interrupted gently, a small smile playing on his lips, "I will have to punish you." My breath hitched. "Punish me?" His smile widened, turning wicked. "I'll make you wear the finest silk in the kingdom and eat nothing but honey cakes for a week." I let out a startled laugh, a sound that felt rusty in my throat. It was the first time I had laughed in months. Cyrus's expression softened at the sound. "There," he whispered. "That is what I want to collect. Not gold. That sound." The carriage suddenly hit a deep rut in the road, jolting violently. I was thrown forward, straight into Cyrus's arms. He caught me easily, his hands steady on my waist. But instead of setting me back, he went rigid. His head snapped toward the window, his body radiating sudden, sharp tension. The playful atmosphere vanished instantly. "What is it?" I whispered, fear spiking. "Stay down," Cyrus commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. "Get on the floor with your sister. Now." "Why? What's happening?" Before he could answer, a howl ripped through the night. Not a wolf howl, but something distorted, wrong. Something that sounded like metal tearing. An arrow slammed into the side of the carriage, the tip glowing with purple witchfire, piercing the wood inches from my head. "Rogues," Cyrus snarled, his eyes shifting fully to gold. "And they brought a witch." Chapter 7. Sanctuary in Velvet. "Get down," Cyrus roared, shoving me gently but firmly toward the floorboards. I scrambled off the seat, pulling the sleeping Ellen down with me. She woke with a whimper, confused and terrified, but I pressed her head into the thick fur rug. "Stay quiet, Ellen. Don't move," I whispered, shielding her body with mine. Above us, the carriage was a chaotic box of noise. Arrows thudded against the reinforced wood like hail, and the horses screamed in panic as the driver fought to keep them on the road. Cyrus didn't look afraid. He looked like a predator who had just been offered a snack. He stood in the cramped space, bracing himself against the roof. He reached for the door handle, but before he opened it, he looked down at me. "Do not open this door, Lyra. Not for anyone but me. If they get close—" He pulled a dagger from his boot, a wicked, curved blade made of shimmering silver, and pressed the hilt into my hand. "You use this. Aim for the throat." "Cyrus, don't go out there!" I gasped, gripping the dagger until my palm hurt. "There could be dozens of them." "Then it will be a fair fight," he said with a dark grin. He kicked the door open and launched himself into the night. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Aylin and me in the trembling dark. Outside, the sounds of battle erupted instantly. I heard the wet tear of flesh, the crunch of bone, and the terrifying roars of shifting wolves. But cutting through it all was the sound of him. A roar so deep and powerful it vibrated in my chest, shaking the very floorboards of the carriage. Flashes of golden light illuminated the gaps in the window curtains, Cyrus using his alpha power to crush his enemies. "Lyra, I'm scared," Aylin sobbed, clutching my dress. "I know," I soothed, stroking her hair with my free hand, the other still white-knuckling the dagger. "The king is protecting us. He won't let them touch you." I said it to comfort her, but as the words left my mouth, I realized I believed them. For the first time in my life, I trusted the Alpha protecting me. Roran would have used us as bait. Cyrus had turned himself into a shield. Minutes stretched like hours. The carriage rocked violently as something heavy slammed against the side. A rogue wolf, snarling and scrabbling, tried to claw through the window. I screamed, raising the dagger, but before the beast could break the glass, a massive, dark shape tackled it from the roof. There was a sickening snap, a yelp, and then silence. Slowly, the noise of battle faded. The howls turned to whimpers, then to nothing. The only sound left was the heavy panting of the horses and the wind whistling through the arrow holes in the carriage walls. I waited, heart pounding, dagger raised. The door handle turned. I tensed, ready to strike. The door swung open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the moonlight. He was drenched in blood, black, oily, rogue blood, but he was standing tall. Cyrus. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, his golden eyes blazing in the dark. When he saw me huddled on the floor, dagger raised and ready to defend my sister, a look of fierce pride crossed his face. "You can put the knife down, little queen," he said, his voice rough with the aftershocks of the shift. "They're dead. All of them." I lowered the blade, my hands trembling as the adrenaline crashed. "Are you hurt?" "Not a scratch," he promised. He stepped into the carriage, bringing with him the sharp, metallic scent of blood and the ozone smell of his power. He didn't sit. He knelt on the floor beside me, heedless of the gore on his clothes,
and checked Elin first. "Is she unharmed?" "She's just scared," I said. Elin was staring at him with wide, awe-filled eyes. To her, he must have looked like a monster, covered in death. But Cyrus smiled at her, a gentle, surprisingly warm expression. "Brave girl," he told her. "You faced a rogue ambush and didn't make a sound. I have soldiers who scream louder than that." Elin managed a tiny, watery smile. Cyrus turned his attention to me. He took the dagger from my hand, sheathing it back in his boot, then took my hands in his. His touch was sticky with blood, but I didn't care. "I apologize," he said, his voice grim. "This was not the journey I promised you. I should have anticipated Roran might hire mercenaries to intercept us." "Roran sent them!" Anger flared in my chest, hot and sudden.
"He tried to kill us?" "He tried to kill me," Cyrus corrected. "He wanted to take you back, but he underestimated 2 things." Cyrus leaned in, his forehead resting against mine, disregarding the blood, disregarding the dirt. "He underestimated my rage, and he underestimated your worth." "My worth?" I whispered. "The witch," Cyrus murmured. "She threw a hex at the carriage. It should have incinerated the wood, but it bounced off. Do you know why?" I shook my head. "Because of you," he said. "Your primordial mark. It acted as a shield. You saved us, Lyra. Even dormant, even untrained, your magic protected this carriage better than any steel." He pulled back, looking at me with a reverence that made my soul ache. "We are a good team, you and I." I looked at my hands, clean now but still tingling with that strange golden warmth. I had protected us? Me? The useless servant girl? "We need to keep moving," Cyrus said, standing up and offering me a hand to rise. "It's not safe to stop, but the worst is over. The border of my territory is only an hour away. Once we cross that line, not even an army can touch you." I took his hand, letting him pull me up from the floor. As I settled back onto the velvet seat, exhausted but alive, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't just a passenger anymore. I wasn't just baggage he had claimed. I was part of this, part of him. "Cyrus?" I asked as the carriage began to roll again. "Yes?" "Teach me," I said, my voice steady. "Teach me how to use it, the magic. If Roran is going to keep coming for us, I don't want to just be the shield. Next time, I want to be the sword." Cyrus looked at me, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face. Not at me, but with me. "Oh, my queen," he purred. "I was hoping you would say that." Chapter 8. The Palace of Light. The sun was just beginning to bleed gold across the horizon when the carriage finally slowed. I had fallen into a restless doze against the window, my hand still instinctively covering Aylin's sleeping form. But the change in motion jerked me awake. My body ached from the tension of the ambush, and the smell of dried blood still clung to the air, a grim reminder of the night's violence. I sat up, rubbing the grit from my eyes, and looked out. My breath caught in my throat. We were no longer in the dense, suffocating forests of the Ashen Ridge territory. We were crossing a massive white stone bridge that spanned a chasm so deep I couldn't see the bottom. And on the other side, it was breathtaking. The Valerian Palace rose from the mountain like it had been carved from the peak itself. It wasn't a fortress of gloom like Roran's keep. It was a structure of soaring white towers, gleaming glass domes, and terraces that cascaded down the cliffs like waterfalls. Banners of gold and black snapped in the wind from every spire. It looked impenetrable. It looked divine. It looked like a place where monsters like Roran couldn't reach. "Home," Cyrus murmured. I turned to see him watching me, his expression tired but content. He had stayed awake the entire journey, watching the door, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Welcome to the Sun Peak Citadel, Lyra." The carriage rumbled through the massive iron gates, which stood open for us, flanked by dozens of guards in polished armor who snapped to attention as we passed. We pulled into a sprawling courtyard paved with marble that shone in the dawn light. Fountains sprayed crystal-clear water into the air, and the scent of blooming jasmine and citrus replaced the metallic tang of blood. It was overwhelming. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of insecurity. I looked down at my dress, torn, stained with wine and dirt. I was a beggar entering a palace of light. "I don't belong here," I whispered, the fear more potent than the rogue's had been. "Look at this place, Cyrus. Look at me." Cyrus reached across the space between us, taking my chin in his hand, forcing me to look at him. "This palace is just stone and glass, Lyra. It is cold, without life. You are the fire that will warm it. Never apologize for your presence." Before I could argue, the carriage door opened. A steward in pristine livery bowed low. "Your Majesty, we are relieved to see you return." Cyrus stepped out first, then turned to help Aelin and me. My legs were shaky as my boots hit the marble. Aelin stared around her, mouth agape, forgetting her sickness in the face of such wonder. "Is this heaven?" she asked seriously. Cyrus chuckled, the sound deep and warm. "Close enough, little one. Come." He led us up the grand staircase. Servants paused in their tasks to bow, their eyes widening when they saw me, not with judgment, I realized with shock, but with curiosity and respect. They saw the king's hand on my back. That was enough for them. We walked through corridors lined with tapestries depicting ancient battles and legendary wolves. Finally, we reached a set of double doors made of polished mahogany inlaid with mother-of-pearl. "The East Wing," Cyrus announced, pushing the doors open. "It is the sunniest part of the palace. This will be your suite." I stepped inside and nearly tripped. The room was larger than the entire servants' quarters back at Ashen Ridge. A massive four-poster bed draped in white silk dominated the center. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto a private balcony overlooking the valley. There was a sitting area with velvet couches, a fireplace that was already crackling with warmth, and a door that I assumed led to a dressing room. "And Aelin?" I asked, looking around for a cot or a corner for her. "Through there." Cyrus pointed to a connecting door. "She has her own room, just as grand, but connected to yours, so you can be close." He turned to a maid who had appeared silently by the door. "Prepare a bath for Lady Lyra, and send for the royal physician immediately for the child." "Yes, Your Majesty." The maid curtsied and hurried off. Cyrus turned to me, his golden eyes sweeping over my exhausted form. "Rest, Lyra. You are safe here. There are no locks on the outside of these doors, only the inside. You are free to come and go, or to lock the world out if you need to." "Thank you," I breathed, tears pricking my eyes again. "For everything." He stepped closer, invading my personal space in that way that made my heart race. He reached out, tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear.
his knuckles grazing my cheek. "Do not thank me yet," he murmured, his voice dropping an octave. "I haven't given you the world yet. I'm just getting started." He lingered for a second longer, the tension between us pulling taut, before he turned and strode out of the room, leaving me standing in the centre of a palace that felt too good to be real. I walked to the balcony doors and locked them, then the main door. Safe. Finally safe. But as I turned back to the room, I caught my reflection in a tall, gilded mirror. The girl staring back was a stranger, wild-eyed, dirty, but with a faint, pulsing golden light emanating from her skin. The primordial mark. It was fading now, but it was there. I wasn't just Lyra the servant anymore. I was something dangerous. And as I stared at the glowing symbol, I realized that Roran wasn't the only one who would want to control it. Cyrus had saved me, yes, but what would he expect in return? Chapter 9. Washing Away the Past. The bath was a masterpiece of indulgence. The tub was carved from a single block of rose quartz, large enough to swim in, filled with steaming water that smelled of lavender and milk. The maids had been kind but efficient, stripping away my ruined clothes and vanishing them before I could protest. I sank into the water with a groan, the heat seeping into my bruised muscles, loosening the knots of tension that had been my constant companions for 6 months. I scrubbed my skin until it was pink, desperate to wash away not just the dirt of the journey, but the feeling of Roran's hands, the smell of the wine he had made me spill, the memory of his laughter. I washed my hair 3 times, watching the water turn dark with grime, then drain away clear. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a robe of white silk that felt like water against my skin, I felt lighter, cleaner, but also exposed. Without the layer of dirt and rags, I felt vulnerable. I was just a girl in a palace full of wolves who had known nothing but power their whole lives. I walked into the bedroom to find a tray of food waiting, fresh fruit, warm bread with honey, and roasted chicken. I ate ravenously, realizing I hadn't had a full meal in days. Ellin was already asleep in the next room, checked by the physician who had assured me she just needed rest and good food. For the first time, I didn't have to worry about her. A knock at the door made me jump. I tightened the robe around myself. "Who is it?" "It's me." Cyrus's voice came through the wood, deep and reassuring. "May I come in?" I hesitated, then unlocked the door. Cyrus stood there, and my breath hitched. He had washed and changed too. The blood-soaked armour was gone, replaced by a simple black shirt and trousers that emphasised the width of his shoulders. His hair was damp, curling slightly at the ends. He looked less like a king and more like a man. A very dangerous, very beautiful man. "I brought you something," he said, holding out a small wooden box. I took it, my fingers brushing his. "What is it?" "Open it." I lifted the lid. Inside, resting on velvet, was a necklace. It was a simple gold chain holding a pendant of a sunburst, encrusted with tiny amber stones. It matched the mark on my forehead perfectly. "It belonged to my mother," Cyrus said softly, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "She wasn't a primordial, but she loved the sun. I thought it might remind you that you are not in the shadows anymore." I stared at the necklace, overwhelmed. "Cyrus, I can't take this. It's a royal heirloom." "You are a primordial queen," he countered, stepping closer until I had to tilt my head back to look at him.
There is no jewelry in my vault worthy of you, but this is a start. He took the box from my hands, lifted the necklace, and moved behind me. Lift your hair. I obeyed, my hands shaking. I felt the cool metal of the chain settle against my skin, followed by the warm brush of his fingers as he clasped it. He didn't move away immediately. He stood behind me, his breath stirring the hair on my neck. I could feel the heat radiating from him, pulling me backward. You look, he started, his voice rough. He cleared his throat and stepped back, putting distance between us. You look like yourself again. I turned to face him, touching the pendant. Thank you. It's beautiful. Lyra, he said, his tone turning serious. We need to talk about what happens next. Roran knows what you are now. He won't stop. He's a coward, but cowards are dangerous when they're desperate. And word will spread. Other alphas, they will come for you. A primordial is a weapon every pack wants. I'm not a weapon, I said fiercely. I'm a person. I know, Cyrus said, his eyes fierce. But they won't see that. They will see a battery to charge their magic. That is why we must train you. You need to know how to control the light, how to defend yourself. You said you would teach me, I reminded him. I will, he promised. But there is something else. To fully awaken your power, to stabilize it so it doesn't burn you out. He hesitated, looking away for the first time. What? I asked, stepping closer. Tell me. He looked back at me, his gaze intense. You need an anchor, a mate. The bond grounds the magic. Without it, the primordial energy can become volatile. It can consume you. My heart pounded. Are you saying I have to mate with you? To survive? No, Cyrus said quickly, reaching out to grip my shoulders. I would never force that, never. We can find other ways. Artifacts, spells. It will be harder, slower, but we will do it. I will not claim you just to save you. I want you to choose me, Lyra. Or choose no one. But the choice must be yours. I looked at him, this powerful, ancient king who could take whatever he wanted, yet was offering me the one thing I had never had. Agency. My wolf purred inside me, drawn to him, wanting to close the distance. But I held back. I needed to know I was strong enough on my own first. Show me, I whispered. Show me what I am. Take me to the archives. Cyrus smiled, a slow, proud thing. As you wish, my queen. Chapter 10. The Primordial Truth. The royal archives were buried deep beneath the palace, a labyrinth of stone corridors cool enough to make me shiver. Cyrus led the way, carrying a torch that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The air here smelled of old paper and dust, the scent of history. We passed rows and rows of towering shelves packed with scrolls, books, and tablets. It was a library that made the one at Ashen Ridge look like a broom closet. Here, Cyrus said, stopping before a massive iron door covered in runes. He placed his hand on the metal. The runes flared gold, responding to his royal blood, and the heavy door swung open with a groan. The restricted section. Only the king and his heir may enter. And me? I asked. You are the subject of half the books in here, he replied dryly, gesturing for me to enter. The room was circular, dominated by a large stone table in the centre. Cyrus walked to a shelf, seemingly knowing exactly where to look, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound tome that looked older than the palace itself. He laid it on the table and opened it carefully.
The pages were brittle, covered in faded ink and illustrations. "Look," he pointed. I leaned in. The illustration showed a wolf, but it wasn't like any wolf I had seen. It was larger, surrounded by a halo of light
with the same sunburst symbol on its forehead that I now bore. "The Primordial Wolf," Cyrus read, translating the ancient text. "Born of the sun and the earth. They are not just alphas, they are the source. When the first packs were dying of the shadow plague, the Primordials appeared. Their light didn't just kill the monsters, it healed the land. It restored the magic." He looked up at me. "You are a healer, Lyra. A restorer." I ran my fingers over the drawing. "But why me? I was weak. I couldn't even shift." "Read this." He pointed to a paragraph at the bottom. "The primordial power is too great for a young vessel. It remains dormant, cloaked in mediocrity, until a catalyst appears. A mate of equal strength, or a threat of extinction. The dormancy is a shield. If you had awakened as a child, your body would have burned to ash." "So Roran calling me weak saved your life," Cyrus finished. "If he had known what you were, he would have sold you years ago. Your weakness was your survival instinct." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. All those years of hating myself, of thinking I was broken. I was just waiting. "There is more," Cyrus said, his voice tightening. He turned the page. The next illustration was darker. It showed a primordial wolf in chains, its light being siphoned off into a dark crystal. The wolf looked withered, dying. "What is this?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "The harvesting," Cyrus said grimly. "In the Dark Ages, warlords realized they couldn't control primordials, so they trapped them. They used blood magic to drain their essence to power their armies. It is a forbidden art, lost for centuries." "Lost?" I asked, looking at his face. He looked worried. "Supposedly," he said. "But Roran's new mate, Talia. I had my spies look into her background before I arrived at the feast." "Talia?" I frowned. "She's just a vain social climber." "She is from the Black Marsh clan," Cyrus said. "They are known for trading in illegal artifacts. If she recognizes what you are, if she knows the old ways." Suddenly, a deep, resonant thrum vibrated through the floor. The torch flickered. Cyrus's head snapped up, his nostrils flaring. "What was that?" I whispered. "The perimeter wards," Cyrus snarled, his eyes flashing gold. "Someone just breached the outer wall." "Who?" "Not who," Cyrus said, grabbing my hand and pulling me away from the table. "What? I smell rot. And sulfur." "Demons?" I gasped. "Worse," Cyrus said, extinguishing the torch and plunging us into darkness. "Constructs. Dead flesh animated by magic." He pulled me against his chest, his voice a whisper in my ear. "Talia didn't just come to marry Roran. She came to hunt. And she just found us." From the darkness of the corridor outside, a slow, dragging sound echoed. Scrape. Thud. Scrape. Thud. Something heavy was coming. And it wasn't breathing. Chapter 11. The Night of Terrors.
The sound was a wet, heavy, dragging noise, like raw meat being pulled across stone. Scrape. Thud. Scrape. Thud. It echoed in the claustrophobic darkness of the corridor, growing louder with every heartbeat. Cyrus extinguished the torch, plunging us into absolute blackness, but his hand on my arm was a solid anchor. I could feel the tension vibrating through him, his muscles coiled like steel cables ready to snap. The smell of sulphur and rot grew overpowering, choking the clean scent of old paper that usually permeated the archives. "Stay behind me," Cyrus breathed, his voice barely a vibration against my ear. "Do not engage. Do not let them touch you." A shape lurched out of the shadows ahead, a grotesque mockery of a wolf, its flesh grey and stitched together with crude black thread. Its eyes were empty sockets glowing with a sickly purple light. A construct. Magic animated death. It opened its jaw, unhinging it unnaturally wide, and let out a shriek that sounded like tearing metal. Cyrus moved. He didn't shift. The corridor was too narrow for his massive wolf form, but he didn't need to. He was a blur of lethal grace, his sword singing as it left the scabbard. The blade severed the creature's head in a single stroke, black ichor spraying against the stone wall. But the thing didn't stop. The headless body lunged, claws scrabbling on the floor, while two more shapes peeled themselves from the darkness behind it. "They are bound to a caster," Cyrus shouted, kicking the headless torso back into its packmates. "Normal steel won't kill them unless I sever the connection." I pressed my back against the cold iron door of the restricted section, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt useless. I was the Primordial Queen, the supposed mother of magic, yet here I was, cowering while the king fought a nightmare alone. Another construct lunged from the side, bypassing Cyrus. It was smaller, faster, its rot scent hitting me before I saw it. It leaped for my throat, claws extended. Instinct took over. I didn't think. I didn't cast a spell. I just screamed. But it wasn't a sound. It was light. A shockwave of pure, blinding gold erupted from my chest. It was hot, searing, and magnificent. The explosion of energy illuminated every dusty corner of the archives, brighter than the sun at noon. The construct mid-air screeched as the light hit it, not pushing it back, but unmaking it. The purple magic animating its limbs sizzled and vanished, leaving only a pile of dry bones and dust that clattered to the floor. The light expanded, washing over the other creatures Cyrus was fighting. They dissolved instantly, their connection to the dark magic severed by the sheer purity of my power. Silence rushed back into the corridor, heavy and sudden. The light faded, leaving only the soft, pulsing glow of the mark on my forehead. I slumped against the door, my knees turning to water. Cyrus was there instantly, catching me before I hit the ground. He looked wild, his eyes wide, staring at the piles of dust that had been monsters seconds ago. "You burnt them," he whispered, looking at me as if I were a terrifying miracle. "You burned the magic right out of the air." I didn't want them to hurt you," I stammered, my teeth chattering as the adrenaline crashed. "We need to move," Cyrus said, his voice grim. He scooped me up into his arms effortlessly. "If constructs got in, the perimeter is compromised. The palace isn't safe tonight." He didn't take me back to my room. He took me to his. He kicked the door shut and engaged the heavy deadbolts, then paced the room like a caged tiger, checking the windows, the balcony, the shadows. I sat on the edge of his massive bed, shaking. The reality of what happened was sinking in. Talia, the Black Marsh clan.
They weren't just political rivals. They were monsters who used dead things as weapons. "Cyrus," I whispered. He stopped pacing and came to me, kneeling between my legs. He took my cold hands in his. "I failed you. I promised you safety, and I let death into my own home." "You didn't fail," I said, reaching out to touch his face. "We fought them. We won." "This time," he growled. "But they know you are here. They know what you can do now." He pulled me down, wrapping his arms around me, burying his face in my neck. He smelled of storm scent and fury. "Sleep here tonight, Lyra. If nightmares come, let them be dreams, not monsters. I will not close my eyes." I curled up against him, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the only thing that kept the terror at bay. Chapter 12. The Uninvited Guest. 3 days passed in a blur of heightened security. The palace, once open and airy, transformed into a fortress. Guards doubled at every entrance, and wards were reinforced by the royal sorcerers until the air hummed with static. I spent my mornings in the training yards with Cyrus, learning not just how to summon the light, but how to aim it. I learned that my power responded to emotion. Fear made it flash, anger made it burn, and calm made it sustain. It was exhausting work, but I refused to stop. I would never be helpless again. We were in the middle of a lesson, Cyrus correcting my stance, his chest pressed against my back, when the great war horn on the outer wall blew. One long, mournful note. "Visitors." "Stay here," Cyrus commanded, his body going rigid. "No," I said, stepping away from him. "If it's them, I'm coming." We walked to the battlements together. Below, gathered at the main gate, was a procession that made my blood run cold. It wasn't an army. That would have been an act of war. It was a delegation. At the front, riding a white stallion he had no business sitting on, was Roran. Beside him rode Talia, looking smug in black velvet, and behind them were 5 elders from the High Council, the governing body of all wolf territories. "Open the gate!" Roran shouted, his voice amplified by magic. "We come under the banner of the High Council. To deny us is treason." Cyrus gripped the stone railing until it cracked. "The audacity," he snarled. "He brings the council to hide behind their robes." "What does he want?" I asked, though I felt a sinking dread in my stomach. "He wants a trial," Cyrus said. "He wants to prove I stole you." "Let them in," I said quietly. Cyrus turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Lyra, no. I will not let that worm near you." "If we deny them, they will tell the world you are a tyrant who kidnaps women," I reasoned, my voice steady despite the fear fluttering in my throat. "Let them in. Let everyone see who the real tyrant is." Cyrus studied my face for a long moment. He saw the resolve there, the steel that had been forged in 6 months of servitude. He nodded once. "Open the gates!" he roared to the guards below. We met them in the courtyard. Roran dismounted with a flourish, looking around the magnificent palace with greedy eyes. The council elders looked uncomfortable, shuffling in their robes. But Talia looked like a cat who had cornered a mouse. "King Cyrus?" Elder Thorn, the head of the council, stepped forward. He was a wizened old wolf who prioritized rules over morality. "We have received a grave complaint from Alpha Roran of Ashenridge. He claims you abducted a member of his pack, a vulnerable, mentally unstable servant girl. violating the Territorial Integrity Act. Abducted? Cyrus laughed, a dark, terrifying sound. She walked out of his hall on her own 2 feet.
Because she was under a spell, Talia piped up, her voice shrill. We have witnesses who saw him use blood magic on her. That mark on her forehead? It's a brand of compulsion, not a blessing.
Lies, Cyrus growled, stepping forward. His alpha aura flared, making the horses whinny in panic. Careful, Talia. I smell the rot on you from 3 days ago. Do not speak of dark magic in my presence.
Talia paled, but held her ground. Roran stepped up, puffing out his chest.
I am here to reclaim my property, King Cyrus, and to ensure she gets the help she needs. Hand Lyra over, and we will not press charges for your act of aggression.
Property, Cyrus repeated, his hand drifting to the hilt of his sword.
You are very fond of that word. It is the law, Roran smirked. Unless she speaks for herself, without your influence, she belongs to her birth pack. Then let her speak, Cyrus said, stepping aside.
I took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the king. I wasn't wearing rags today. I was wearing a gown of gold silk, the sunburst pendant resting against my throat. I didn't look at my feet. I looked straight at the council. I am right here, I said, and I am done being silent. Chapter 13. A Queen's Voice. Roran blinked as if he didn't recognize me. For a moment his arrogance faltered. He was used to the girl with the bowed head and the dirty apron, the girl who flinched when he raised a hand. The woman standing before him now stood tall, her shoulders back, her eyes dry and clear.
Lyra, Roran said, his voice dripping with fake concern. Thank the spirits you are safe. You look feverish. Come, child. We have a carriage waiting to take you home. The healers are ready to treat your delusion. He tried to use his alpha voice, a low-level command laced into the words, designed to force submission from weaker wolves. I felt the pressure of it against my mind, a greasy, heavy weight urging me to obey. 6 months ago it would have crushed me. Today it felt like a moth hitting a lantern. I'm not delusional, Roran, I said, my voice projecting across the courtyard without effort. And I am not coming home. You are confused, Talia hissed, stepping up beside him. The king has brainwashed you. Look at you, dressed up like a doll. Do you really think he wants you? You're a servant. I was a servant because you made me one, I replied, turning my gaze to the council elders. Alpha Roran held my sister's life hostage to force my servitude. He denied me my rank, stole my inheritance, and treated a daughter of the former Alpha like a slave. Slander! Roran shouted, panic entering his eyes. She is lying. She is unstable.
Is it slander? I asked, stepping closer. The golden mark on my forehead began to pulse, reacting to my rising anger. Shall we ask the king to bring the healer's ledgers? Shall we show the council the bruises on my knees?
Enough! Roran roared.
He lost his temper, abandoning the concerned alpha act. He lunged forward, his hand raised to strike me, forgetting where he was, forgetting who was watching.
You ungrateful little bit! Sit!
The word didn't come from Cyrus, it came from me. It ripped from my throat, not like a shout, but like a thunderclap. It was the voice of the Primordial, an ancient command that bypassed the ears and struck the soul. The air in the courtyard shattered. Roran didn't just stop, he was slammed into the marble pavement, as if a giant hand had swatted him. He fell to his knees, gasping, his eyes bulging with shock. The council elders stumbled back, clutching their chests. Even the horses buckled. Silence reigned. Absolute, terrified silence. I stood over Roran, my body humming with power. I hadn't meant to do it, but the feeling was intoxicating. He was on his knees before me, just as I had been before him for so long. "You will never touch me again," I told him, my voice returning to normal, but still carrying the weight of the command. "And you will never command me. I am not your property. I am a primordial, and you are insignificant." Roran wheezed, struggling against the residual weight of my voice to lift his head. He looked around and saw his humiliation. The council was staring at me with awe and fear. Talia looked ready to bolt. He had lost the legal argument the moment I opened my mouth. He had lost the moral high ground. He was losing everything. Desperation is an ugly thing. It twists fear into madness. Roran scrambled to his feet, wiping blood from his lip. He realized he couldn't take me by law, and he couldn't take me by force. But there was one ancient law that even the king had to respect. "I challenge!" Roran screamed, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger, not at me, but at Cyrus. "I challenge for the right of ownership, trial by combat, ancient law. If I win, the girl returns to Ashen Ridge." The council elders murmured. Elder Thorn stepped forward, looking grave. "The challenge is valid," he croaked. "If an alpha believes a pack member is being held against the pack's interest, he may demand combat." Cyrus smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. He stepped up beside me, his shadow falling over Roran. He didn't look worried. He looked like a man who had finally been given permission to do what he had wanted to do since the moment he met Roran. "Accepted," Cyrus said softly. "Prepare to bleed, little wolf." Chapter 14. The Challenge. The courtyard cleared instantly, the council elders and guards scrambling back to form a wide, fearful perimeter. The air crackled with the heavy static of anticipation, the kind that always precedes violence. Roran did not wait for a signal. He tore off his velvet jacket, throwing it to the ground with a snarl, his body already beginning to convulse with the change. Bones cracked and reshaped with sickening wet snaps, fur sprouting in patches of russet and gray. Within seconds, a massive wolf stood where the man had been, its jaws snapping, saliva dripping onto the pristine marble. He threw his head back and howled, a sound meant to intimidate, meant to remind everyone that he was an alpha, a killer, a beast of the wilds. Cyrus did not shift. He did not even flinch. He simply unbuttoned his cuffs with maddening slowness, rolling his sleeves up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He handed his sword to a nearby guard, refusing to use steel against a beast. This was to be a dismantling, not a duel. He turned to me, his golden eyes briefly softening. "Do not look away, Lyra," he said, his voice low and steady. "Watch. See that the monster you feared is just a dog barking at a storm." Roran lunged. He moved with surprising speed for his bulk, a blur of teeth and claws aiming for the king's throat. The crowd gasped, but Cyrus didn't step back. He stepped into the attack.
He caught the massive wolf in midair, his hands locking around Roran's throat and shoulder. The impact was thunderous, but Cyrus didn't buckle. With a roar of effort, he used Roran's own momentum against him, twisting his body and slamming the alpha into the ground with enough force to crack the stone pavers. The wolf yelped, a high-pitched sound of shock, and scrambled to regain his footing. Roran snapped at Cyrus's face, his teeth grazing the king's cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. That was his mistake. The sight of his own blood didn't slow Cyrus, it ignited him. The king's eyes flooded with absolute gold, his human facade slipping. He moved faster than thought, delivering a brutal kick to the wolf's ribs that sent Roran skidding across the courtyard. Before Roran could recover, Cyrus was on him. He grabbed the wolf by the scruff of his neck and the back of his hind leg, lifting him high and slamming him down again. And again. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution of power. Roran slashed and bit, desperate now, realizing he was outmatched. But Cyrus was a mountain. The king dodged a clumsy swipe and drove his fist into the wolf's snout, a blow that stunned the beast. Roran collapsed, shifting back into his human form, naked and bleeding, gasping for air on the cold stone. He tried to crawl away, but Cyrus stepped on his chest, pinning him to the ground. The king looked down, his face a mask of cold, indifferent judgment. He raised his hand, claws extending from his fingertips, ready to deliver the final blow to the throat. "Yield," Cyrus growled, the sound vibrating through the courtyard. "Yield, and die quickly." Roran spat blood, his eyes filled with hate. I yield," he wheezed, but his hand moved toward his discarded jacket, reaching for a concealed dagger. Cyrus saw it. His eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand higher, ready to end it. The violence in the air was suffocating. I watched, my heart hammering. I wanted him dead. I wanted the man who had sold me, humiliated me, and hurt my sister to stop breathing. But as I looked at Roran, broken, pathetic, cheating even in defeat, I realized something. Death was too easy. Death was an escape. If he died today, he died an alpha, a martyr to his own twisted narrative. "Stop!" My voice rang out, sharp and commanding, cutting through the bloodlust. Cyrus froze, his claws inches from Roran's jugular. He didn't look at me, his body trembling with the need to finish it. But he didn't strike. He held the pose, a statue of vengeance, waiting for permission. The entire court turned to look at me. I stepped forward, the golden silk of my gown rustling against the stone, and walked until I was standing over the man who had been my nightmare for 6 years. Chapter 15. The Stripping of Rank. Cyrus looked up at me, his chest heaving, the gold in his eyes slowly receding to reveal the dark brown beneath. He didn't question me. He simply waited, his boots still pressing Roran into the dust. Roran looked up, his face swollen and bruised, a glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes. He thought I was saving him out of mercy. He thought I was still the weak girl who couldn't bear to see blood spilled. He was wrong. "Do not kill him," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Death is a release. He does not deserve peace." "He challenged for ownership of you," Cyrus reminded me, his voice rough. "The law demands a life." "The law demands justice," I corrected. I looked down at Roran, who was struggling to breathe. "If you kill him, he dies as Alpha Roran of Ashenridge. His pack will mourn him. They will tell stories of how he died fighting the king. I will not give him that legacy. I turned to the council elders, who were watching with pale faces. I invoke the law of competence. A wolf who cannot protect his pack, who abuses his station, and who loses a challenge to a superior rank is unfit to lead. Elder Thorn stepped forward, swallowing hard. The girl is correct. The law exists. I turned back to Cyrus. Strip him, I commanded. Take his rank. Leave him with nothing. Cyrus smiled, a dark, satisfied curve of his lips. As my queen commands. He reached down, grabbing Roran by the hair, forcing his head back. But this time, he didn't use physical force. He used his alpha dominance. Cyrus closed his eyes and roared, a sound that wasn't audible but psychic, a wave of pure authority that slammed into everyone in the courtyard. I felt it wash over me like a warm tide, but for Roran, it was an eviction. Roran screamed. It was a sound of absolute loss. I watched as the alpha aura, the subtle, commanding pressure that surrounds a leader, was ripped away from him. It was a violent tearing of the spirit. Shadows seemed to bleed out of him, dissolving in the sunlight. When the screaming stopped, Roran lay panting on the ground. He felt empty, ordinary. The power was gone. He was no longer an alpha. He was just a man. Get up, Cyrus said, stepping back and kicking Roran in the ribs. Roran scrambled to his feet, clutching his chest. He looked at his hands, then at the council, searching for an ally. Talia, he gasped, reaching out toward his betrothed. Help me. We can go to the Southern Isles. Talia looked at him with a sneer that could strip paint. She smoothed the velvet of her dress, her eyes cold. Go with you? She laughed, cruel and sharp. You are a rogue now, Roran. You have no land, no title, no money. Why would I go anywhere with a failure? She turned on her heel and walked toward the palace gates, signaling her guards to follow. She didn't look back once. Roran stood alone in the center of the courtyard, stripped of his rank, his mate, and his dignity. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Lyra, please. Your father. I served him. You betrayed him, I said softly. You are exiled, Roran. If you are found within the borders of the Valyrian territory or Ashen Ridge by sunset, you will be hunted for sport. Run. Roran didn't wait. He turned and fled, limping toward the open gates, a broken figure disappearing into the landscape. The pack guards didn't stop him. They didn't even salute. He was a ghost before he even left the grounds. I watched him go, feeling a heavy weight finally lift from my shoulders. The cage was gone. The monster was gone. I let out a long breath, my knees suddenly feeling weak. A warm, strong arm wrapped around my waist, holding me up. I leaned into Cyrus, smelling the cedar and storm scent of him, grounding myself. It is done, Cyrus whispered into my hair. He is gone. Thank you, I breathed. Do not thank me, he said, turning me in his arms so I faced him. The violence of the fight was gone from his face, replaced by an intensity that made my heart race for a completely different reason. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the courtyard, but between us, the air was blazing. No, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. There are no more enemies, no more distractions. Just you and me, Lyra. Chapter 16. The Golden Bond. The transition from the violence of the courtyard to the serenity of the royal gardens was jarring. Cyrus had led me here as twilight fell, bypassing the celebrations that were already starting inside the palace. The pack was rejoicing at the news of Roran's exile and the king's victory. But Cyrus wanted no part of it. He wanted quiet. He wanted us. The gardens were a labyrinth of moon-blooming flowers and silver fountains, the air filled with the scent of jasmine and night-blooming lily. We stopped by a marble fountain, the water cascading down in gentle sheets. Cyrus turned to me, his silhouette framed by the rising moon. He looked untamed, his shirt still unbuttoned at the collar, the faint coppery scent of the duel clinging to him. But his eyes were clear, no longer the eyes of a warrior, but the eyes of a man starving. "You showed them," he said softly, breaking the silence. "You commanded the council. You exiled an alpha. You are more a queen today than any woman born to the throne." I was terrified, I admitted, stepping closer to him. The pull was stronger now, a physical ache in my chest that demanded I touch him. "But I knew you were there. I knew you wouldn't let me fall." "Never," he vowed. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw, sending shivers cascading down my spine. "But the danger is past, Lyra. The adrenaline is fading. Tell me, what do you feel now? When you look at me, what do you see?" I looked up at him, really looked at him. I didn't see a king or a savior. I saw the other half of my soul. I saw the only person in the world who understood the fire that had been dormant inside me. "I see my home," I whispered. "I see the only man worthy of my power." Cyrus groaned, a low, guttural sound, and pulled me flush against him. His mouth crashed down on mine, hungry and desperate. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a claiming. It was a promise. I melted into him, my hands tangling in his dark hair, pulling him closer. The heat between us spiked, hotter than the primordial light I had summoned in the archives. This was a different kind of magic, ancient and primal. "I cannot wait anymore," he murmured against my lips, his voice ragged. "My wolf is clawing at my ribs. He recognizes you. He demands you." "Then let him have me," I challenged, tilting my head to the side, baring my neck to the moonlight and to him. "Claim me, Cyrus. Make it real." He froze for a second, his breath hot against the sensitive skin of my throat. "Are you sure, Lyra? Once this is done, there is no going back. We are bound, soul to soul, lifetime to lifetime." "I choose you," I said, the words ringing with the truth of the primordial magic. "I choose this." Cyrus didn't hesitate. His canines lengthened, sharp and gleaming, and he bit down. The pain was sharp and sudden, but it vanished instantly, replaced by a flood of liquid gold. It felt like swallowing the sun. The bond snapped into place with the force of a thunderclap. I gasped, my back arching as his soul poured into mine. I could feel him, his fierce protectiveness, his loneliness, his overwhelming love. And he could feel me, my resilience, my hope, my fire. And then the change took me. It didn't hurt. It felt like breaking free from a shell that had been too small for too long. My bones shifted, fluid and quick. I fell to the grass on all fours. But I wasn't human anymore. I shook out my coat, and I saw it shimmering in the moonlight. I wasn't grey or brown. I was gold. My fur glowed with a faint ethereal light, brighter than the moon above. Cyrus shifted beside me, a massive midnight black wolf with eyes like burning coins. He circled me, chuffing softly, nudging my muzzle with his. The contrast was stark. Darkness and light, storm and sun. Perfect balance. He threw his head back and howled, a song of triumph and joy that echoed off the palace walls. I joined him, my voice higher, clearer, harmonizing with his. We ran. We tore through the gardens, paws thundering against the earth, chasing the wind, chasing each other. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running with someone. I was free. I was powerful. I was complete. Chapter 17. The First Morning. I woke to warmth. Not the suffocating heat of the kitchens or the feverish heat of illness, but the gentle, golden warmth of sunlight streaming through sheer curtains. I stretched, my limbs heavy and satisfied, sinking deeper into the mattress that felt like a cloud. For a moment, disoriented, I panicked, expecting the scratch of straw against my cheek and Roran's voice shouting for wine. Then the memories washed over me. The duel, the exile, the garden, the run. I opened my eyes. I was in the king's bed, our bed. The room was bathed in morning light, peaceful and still. I turned, reaching for the space beside me, but the sheets were cool. Cyrus was gone. A tiny seed of anxiety sprouted in my chest. Had it been a dream? Had he regretted it? The heavy oak door creaked open. Cyrus walked in, but he wasn't wearing his crown or his armor. He was wearing loose linen trousers and a simple white shirt, looking relaxed and devastatingly handsome. In his hands, he carried a large silver tray laden with food, fresh berries, steaming pastries, cured meats, and a pot of tea that smelled of herbs and honey. He stopped when he saw I was awake, a soft smile spreading across his face.
"Good morning, wife." The word sent a thrill through me. Wife.
"Good morning," I croaked, my voice still thick with sleep. "Where did you go?" "To the kitchens," he said, walking over and placing the tray on the bed. He sat on the edge, leaning in to kiss my forehead. "I told the staff to stay away. I wanted to do this myself." I looked at the tray, then at him. The memory of the first time we met, me serving him kneeling, crashed into me. The reversal was so absolute it made my throat tight. "You're the king," I whispered. "You shouldn't be serving breakfast." "I serve my queen," he corrected gently, pouring tea into a delicate porcelain cup. "Besides, I distinctly remember threatening to feed you nothing but honey cakes. I am a man of my word." He held up a pastry dripping with glaze, his eyes dancing with amusement. I laughed, taking the pastry. "Is Ellen okay?" "She is downstairs, currently charming the captain of the guard into giving her a tour of the stables," Cyrus assured me. "She is safe, Lyra. She is happy. And she has a home here for as long as she lives." I took a bite of the cake, the sweetness exploding on my tongue. It tasted like victory. I looked around the room, at the sunbeams dancing on the floor, at the open balcony doors letting in the fresh mountain breeze. I looked at the mark on Cyrus's neck where I had claimed him, matching the one he had left on me. "What happens now?" I asked, wiping crumbs from my lip. "The council. The other packs." "Let them come," Cyrus shrugged, looking unbothered. "Let them try. We are mated. You are a primordial. I am the king.
There is nothing in this world that can stand against us. He reached out, taking my hand, his thumb tracing the gold ring he had slipped onto my finger while I slept. But that is for tomorrow. Today we do nothing. Nothing? I raised an eyebrow. That sounds boring for a king. It sounds perfect, he murmured, leaning in until our foreheads touched. His golden eyes searched mine, full of a peace I knew he hadn't felt in centuries. Just stay here with me, Lyra. Let the world turn without us for a while. Just stay. I smiled, leaning into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my chest, the rhythm of my new life. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. I'm finally home. And that is where we leave Lyra and King Cyrus, basking in the sunlight of a new beginning. I don't know about you, but my heart is absolutely full. There is nothing quite like seeing a character who was treated like nothing finally realize she is everything. If you enjoyed this journey from the ashes to the throne, please give this video a massive thumbs up. It really helps the library grow and lets me know you want more stories just like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a fated mate or a satisfying revenge arc. Now I want to hear from you. I read every single comment, so drop a line down below and tell me, where in the world were you listening from today? And more importantly, what was your absolute favourite moment in the story? Was it when King Cyrus kneeled in the Great Hall? Or was it that satisfying moment when Lyra finally used her voice to command the Alpha? Let me know in the comments. I can't wait to chat with you all. Thank you so much for spending your time with me at Storm's Werewolf Romance Library. Until next time, keep dreaming.